We had a vision for Rabbi Mintz and Rabbi Pearce to be up here in seats together and engage in dialogue. But Rabbi Pearce told me, Rabbi Mintz needs no introduction because she's not here. But we miss her, and so we're waving again. And so grateful for astounding, charismatic leadership, her love of Torah, what she's done for this community. It's amazing, and we'll look forward to hearing from her another time. But I could say the same thing about Rabbi Pearce. Rabbi Pearce is a rabbi who needs no introduction because we all know and are grateful to having him in our lives. He's that accessible, engaging intellectual in a way, just comes up to everyone. He is the one who helped build this up and renew this synagogue in such astounding ways. He's the one who's worked so hard to help feed the hungry in this community, to make sure Emanu-El's light is part of the light of San Francisco, that we're sharing our values, our hopes, and our dreams with our interfaith partners. He's the one who had the courage to create a team here of diverse leaders to share Torah, because Torah has so many faces. And I have to tell you, though, he also doesn't need an introduction outside in the larger rabbinic world. He's not just your local senior rabbi, Rabbi Emeritus in this case. Rabbi Pearce is widely respected by our colleagues. I still remember going to a conference, I don't know where the conference was, but going to a room to hear that Stephen Pearce was going to talk about how to renew your synagogue. And the entire room was filled with rabbis wanting to hear what he was doing out here in San Francisco. And he was amazing and generous as always in sharing his perspectives of what we could do as a movement. Rabbi Beth and I would not be here without his encouragement. He had that vision of always wanting to help bring the synagogue forward. He was the editor of the Reform Journal. I could go on and on with what he's done. But I guess I'll end with he's a model emeritus rabbi in terms of how he's been supportive and ongoing and willing to be there for all of you and meet the needs of this community. And he is forever young. We are grateful to welcome here and celebrate his 50th anniversary. Can we break a rule and give him a hand, everybody?
Thank you, Rabbi Singer. Can you hear me? Does it sound a little muffled? Well, there's nobody close by, so I think I'm fine. Ooh, look at that. So just a few observations, and then my precious successors, Rabbi Beth and Rabbi Jonathan, are going to enter dialogue with me. So many of you are here who were here when I arrived in 1993 will remember some of these things. The brains always go first. I believe that every synagogue, every institution should have over its doorpost the phrase, "We've always done it that way." When I came to Temple Emanu-El in 1993, a colleague of mine advised, he said, "Don't go there. That's the congregation of the Ungestübt Deutsche Jiden, the congregation of the filthy rich German Jews." And in fact, I am the first non-German rabbi to serve this congregation in 150 years, and my successors are also Ashkenazic Jews. So things have changed. At that time, the temple was high church, one form of worship, kind of a sleepy giant. The senior rabbi, the assistant rabbi, the educator, they were the whole staff, in addition to some support staff. And when I arrived here and I realized that there was some work to be done, and I asked for something, the lay people said to me, "It's your congregation, Rabbi, do whatever you want." And I had to say, could you repeat that again? Because in my last congregation in Stamford, Connecticut, when I wanted something, what I had to go through to get it was so painful that I stopped asking. So I took the leaders seriously, and My rabbinate has been described by Fred Rosenbaum, our Emanu-El historian, as the temple of the open door. So when I arrived, the Koret initiative had made 4 grants to 4 different congregations for a program person. And we were not one of them, and I said, I want one of those. So I went to see the executive director of the Koret Foundation, and he said, no, we're not going through another round, and don't waste your time, whatever. And then someone said to me, don't waste your time with the executive director, go talk to Tad Toby. And I did, and we became fast friends, and he's been a wonderful supporter. As you know, I'm the Toby Emanu-El Scholar. And when the next round came around, we got one of the Koret initiative grants, which enabled me to hire another staff person. So my first pick when I went to New York to do interviews was for a young, wonderful, full of piss and vinegar rabbi. Did I say that? Sidney B. Mintz. And I realized that as soon as I saw her and saw her in action, that we had to have her. And so I came back, and it was a rough decision because, as some of you know, I followed a rabbi who had been accused of sexual misconduct, and I wasn't sure if the temple was ready for a lesbian rabbi. But the board said, go get a rabbi. And when I came back, they said, why didn't you tell us that she was a lesbian? And I said, you didn't ask. You just said, go get a great rabbi, and I did. And from day one, Sid hit the ground running, developing the young adult community. So many graduates of that community have moved on to the temple board. David Goldman, our extraordinary executive director, began his career as part of the young adult community. So together with the clergy team, we developed something called voluntary dues. We were afraid that because people would call the temple, and what was the first question out of their mouths? How much? And I wanted to lower the barrier to membership, and we began to say, whatever you want, including nothing. And we were concerned that we would lose the average new cohort of $40,000 in dues that year to attract more members. And not only did we not lose the 40,000, the revenue doubled, and the number of new members quadrupled. And it was really quite extraordinary. And that fueled our growth from, at that time, around 1,400 households to a top of 2,800. And Koret came back to us and they said, we want to know why this is so effective, and we're going to fund a study so that we can share this with other congregations. So one of the other accomplishments was the decentralization of the rabbinate. What I said to the board was, you have a series of rabbis who come through as assistants, and the first year they learn the job, the second year they do the job, and in the third year, they're looking for another job. So you get one good year out of every 3. And so I convinced the board that it was wise when we had a keeper like Sydney to keep her. And it's been a wonderful ride all these years. As an aside, if I were in the big seat today, there are a number of programs that I would initiate. Our senior rabbis have been very active in dealing with the homeless population. And in spite of the fact that San Francisco spends $600 million on homelessness, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So using the model of Scott Cowan, who was then the Jewish president of Tulane University after Hurricane Katrina, who had no place to house students or faculty after the storm, he leased 2 cruise ships, and so the campus opened on time in September. The cruise ship bars and slot machines were closed for that. And I think, given the number of cruise ships that are not doing their thing anymore because people don't want to go on cruises because of COVID, the city of San Francisco ought to lease several cruise ships, park them on one of the unused piers in the Embarcadero, and house homeless people, providing all kinds of services for them. So I pass that along to you. You're in charge. But anyway, something like that would be welcomed by the board. Yeah. And I've had great colleagues, Kanta Barak and Marsha Atty, and now Eric Luck, and Ryan Bauer, who started here as a student intern 15 years ago. When you get somebody good, keep them. Jason Rodish, now Sarah Paris. The professional administrative staff, the custodial staff, to name them all would be ridiculous. So I'm grateful to all of you, and I think about the enormous work that you do. And a special word about my successors, the rabbis, singers, who have followed through and advanced the temple of the open door with tremendous energy. They are wonderful, wonderful friends. I cherish our relationship. I said to them from the very beginning, I want to be the oldest assistant rabbi in the United States. So we've had a great run together, and anytime they needed anything, I would never ever say no. And to the past presidents and to the board and to the members whose faith was placed in me, it is a faith that I never betrayed. So finally, in saying thanks, and I'd like to recognize everybody here, though I'll just say Rita Semmel. We just celebrated the unrolling of her teenage volume of her oral history on Thursday. Cantor Martin Feldman and his wife Nancy, who have had long, long careers, and so many other people that I have deep, long-standing connections to. And I'd like to thank my wife, Lori. As some of you know, she's an Assyriologist. And if you don't know what that is, you can enroll in her course that she'll be teaching at the Fromm next month. She studies ancient artifacts. And what's wonderful about that is the older I get, the more interesting I become. It's true. And to my daughter, Sarah, who's streaming in from New York, Sarah, I love you. And to my children, Seema and Michael, and their gorgeous baby, Frida, I am truly grateful, but especially grateful to the Most Holy One, who has preserved me and enabled me to reach this day of celebration. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shechechianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Amen. Fire away, Rabbi Singers. I'm not in charge. I don't know what's next.
Well, we were going to ask one or two questions from the congregation before we go into a blessing. So anybody have a question for Rabbi Pearce about his life, about what he did? I know that I have a question. Rabbi Pearce, how do you keep renewing yourself? And the idea in our day and age where so many people during COVID or the helping professions got tired and checked out, you keep going. So what is the secret of that?
You know, I've been so blessed. Someone once said, how can you stand doing one bar mitzvah after another, week in and week out? And I must tell you that each one is sacred and special. Every kid is different. And it gives me great joy to help people on their Jewish journeys, and that's what we do.
And you have the work and duties of a grandfather now too. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
Thank you. I am so blessed.
Well, one more question, and then we'll have a special blessing from Cantor Derek. We want a special song. And that is, Rabbi Pearce, tell us about the changes of Reform Judaism. How do you see us going forward? And you always hear the argument made that Hasidic Judaism, other Judaisms are going to dominate American life. And then the next Pew study comes out and says, well, actually, all the movements are growing. Why do you think we're succeeding?
Well, it's a question of what you call success. I mean, my prediction is that the number of congregations will contract, and they'll be centered around large congregations like Temple Emanu-El. And in fact, our voluntary dues program unintentionally hurt a lot of the other congregations because this is the place that people want to be, and we have the resources. So that's one of the future things that we have to deal with. The movement itself has changed. There are new seminaries that have opened. People are calling themselves rabbis that have all kinds of different training. Our seminary is hurting because we're not attracting enough candidates. So we have to keep reinventing ourselves, and we will.
Wow. Charles Silverman said that the Jewish people always think that they're dying. We're hypochondriacs. And so we're always then fixing ourselves. And you've been so much a part of it.